Welcome back to Crank the Third. My name is Trevor Young. Now, one thing I've noticed when working with clients, many of whom have been in the professional trenches for 3+ decades, and I'm talking founders, solopreneurs, business professionals, thought leaders, and the like. One thing that I've noticed is they suffer often from the curse of knowledge. That means that they've got so much experience, so much expertise, so many skills that the pathway forward can sometimes become somewhat confusing. So in other words, they lack clarity in terms of positioning themselves in the marketplace and being able to communicate the value that they bring to the table. So this is a topic we're going to dig into this week with global credibility expert and executive coach Mitchell Levy. Plus, I also talk with Mitchell about his entrepreneurial journey, because he's developed himself quite a robust portfolio career that sees him running numerous businesses off the back of his personal brand. So let's get into it. Mitchell, welcome to the show. I want to know, what were you doing 15 years ago?
You know, Trevor, I said I would say this. I'm still going to. So 25 years ago, I was at Comdex in Las Vegas. I was doing presentations on what was business going to be like in the year 2025. So 25 years later, I'm going to say, I can't even begin to tell you how amazingly spot on I was. I'm not convinced I can predict 2050 the same way. 15 years ago, I was sitting on a board of a public firm. I was running, I think at the time, 3 book publishing companies. And I think I was winding down had a CEO networking group. I think I was winding down that. And of course, all the fun stuff that happens personally.
Always lots on in your professional life, sir. And we'll dig into a bit of that in the second part of the interview. But as I said in that intro, that, you know, you and I both deal with people who are, I say they've got the curse of knowledge. They've got so much expertise. They've done so many things. They may have evolved and probably have evolved over a period of time. But when it's about packaging up themselves, being able to pitch themselves, communicate, there's so many ways they can go. I see it as a real issue, because they want to be sort of all things to all people, but we know that that's really hard today. What do you see out there in the marketplace with this type of person who's been in, 30 plus years of building their career and their business?
I think, first of all, it's a phenomenal thing if you are a generalist and you know a lot of things. Yep. That's a great thing.
Yep.
Let me tell you something we've been taught, something that the world says. We've been taught to cast a really wide fish net, because the bigger the net, the more fish we're going to catch. The truth is the opposite is true.
Yeah.
So what's important, even if you are absolutely expert at so many different things, is pick a lane.
Yes.
Pick a lane, pick a focus, pick what's relevant today to the audience you want to serve, and focus on that. And here's the cool part. Let's say you're really narrow in what you pick. That doesn't stop somebody by saying, hey, that sounds really interesting. Can you serve me as well?
Yep. I think, and there's 2 parts to this. One is the business side of it. So what are you going to offer? And the other is the branding or the communications side of things, and obviously one has to support the other. Do you come at it from the business angle first, of the service that you're going to provide, your signature service or services, or do you work through the communications side of things first with your clients?
It's almost a catch-22, because they both work with each other fairly well.
Yes.
But generally speaking, it's about the service, it's about what you provide, and it's about being able to have an audience where you can have video testimonials, having an audience where you can say, and normally what I'll say, Trevor, is, where does 80% of your revenue come from today?
Yep.
And so that has to do with the service. And then we try to narrow that down. Once that's in place, we'll come up with a statement, something that's less than 10 words. We call that a CPOP, your customer point of possibilities. If you can actually articulate where you're executing on your purpose in less than 10 words, then we go back and we say, okay, how do you look? First of all, when people look at you in social media, how do you consistently show up the same way? Second, in your messaging, whether you're going out on podcasts, whether or not it's just simply a weekly newsletter, are you actually saying things that are consistent with how you want to show up in the world? And so I would say the communication strategy and messaging, now that I'm thinking this through, technically comes second, although it's a really close when I'm trying to help
Yeah.
someone define who they are. I have to see how they're putting themselves out there, because sometimes, and this goes back to your people who know too much, sometimes they put themselves out there one way, but then they speak in another way because that's what they want. And so
Yeah.
you have to bring them back to how they're showing. By the way, it seems like you're making a lot of money in this area. Yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. Well, that's a different scenario. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I do hear you about let's call it the comms side and the business side, because often when you go down a comms strategy anyway, you say, well, what are your goals from a business point of view? And it's going to raise all those questions anyway. So the two do go hand in hand. And I think when you say, well, if you're going to go out and talk about this and let's position what you're going to be your line or whatever, that's when then it gets a bit more serious, doesn't it? Because I've got to be stuck with this line, do I? And that's where you've got to force people into it. So you've coached a lot of people over many years. What are the issues when they come to you with around this? Is it a general lack of clarity, or they want to sharpen their point of view? Where do you see people coming? People who come to you. What's their pain points?
I'm going to say something really crazy, although this is not necessarily a pain point. So I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility between 2019 and 2020. I have then continued to do the research empirically since then. 98% of professionals I communicate with do not have clarity. 98%. So it's almost the same as saying everybody
have no clarity in as much as they can't position themselves or give out what you call a CPOP.
I'm going to say, in terms of being able to articulate in less than 10 words who they are by how they show up.
Okay.
Right. So if you can't do this, then it's really hard. It's sort of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a great off the cuff Australian example. When you're in Sydney, almost all roads lead to the Opera House, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if all of a sudden you went drinking, you went bar hopping, you weren't looking at the Opera House, and so I said, how far are we? We have to kind of know where you are before you can figure out what direction to go and how far it'll be to get there. And the thing is, even though all roads lead there, if you go the wrong direction, you're not going to get there. I mean, if you're local, you'll figure it out quickly. Well, if all roads lead to a client, if somebody doesn't have clarity, it's just not as clear, not only for the client to hire them, but probably most important, and this is what I want to put some emphasis on, is the person who is the perfect person to refer you is not going to know how to refer you. If you do all things to all people, your referring partner is not going to refer you. They're going to refer the person who's a specialist in a particular area.
I want to unpack that a little bit, because that is really important. And we hear about marketing shows and, marketers and gurus and funnels and all that crap in the online world. But very few people, and I come from a PR background, so referral and who are the people that influence is something we talk about a lot. But that referral is particularly, again, if you're, late 40s, midlife, early 50s sort of stuff. You're a consultant, you're a coach, you're a thought leader, you're a speaker, you're an author, whatever you are, and multiple things you do, you will have a decent network. That's one of your advantages of being in the trenches for 3+ decades. But you're right. If people can't articulate what you do and be able to refer their people to you, they might say, Mitchell's a great fellow, you should go and see him. How's he going to help me? I'm not sure.
So for me,
that's the thing. That's the issue.
Yeah, Trevor, what they're going to recommend or remember for me is either clarity or credibility.
Yep.
Not that that's what they are asking for. So that may not be their want, but that's absolutely their need. right?
Yeah.
And so that's the issue. When I was running book publishing companies, as a good example, running book publishing companies, even some of my friends, if I hadn't touched them in 6 months or a year, might go and publish somewhere else because when they were ready to publish, they went to who was close,
Yeah.
right? And so even your clients or your prospects, if you're not touching them in a way that they kind of remember who you are, they're either not going to recommend you or they're just not going to remember you around.
Yeah. The interesting thing there is you talked about wants versus needs. Where with referral partners or just people who are referring you, people who like you, advocates, supporters and champions of who you are and what you do you feel that people often refer or recommend based on a need or a want, as in, hey mate, I think you need to talk to someone like Mitchell, versus, that person pours their heart out, I've got an issue with clarity, oh, you should speak to Mitchell. Is there any, not that, you've done referrer research, but anecdotally, where do you sit on that side of things?
That's a great question. I don't think anyone has ever asked that question, so I'll have to answer while we're talking. If I'm thinking about I can answer that. First of all, if I think about the last 5 people that referred me, it was almost even though obviously that's an uneven number. What I think about is the difference between someone who will refer you once versus someone who will refer you on a continuous basis.
Yep.
Right? And when I'm thinking about the person who will refer me, I had a great conversation with one of my ongoing referral partners this morning. And what I'm doing with him is I am supporting him and his clients so that the service he provides to his clients will be more effective.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that is particularly more of a want than a need.
Yep.
I mean, technically you could say it's a need.
Yep.
But it's in the long term, if the effectivity of his program will be, he absolutely needs to show that when he works with his clients, they make more money.
Yep.
Right. So that's absolutely a need. But in terms of today, it's more of a want. He says, I would want my people to be more successful versus I need. So I guess to answer your question, it's probably goes back to the buying decisions.
Yep.
It's more of a want when people are thinking about it than a need.
Yep. Okay. That's fair call. And when it comes to getting people to go through the journey with you, how long is there an average time it takes? I want people to understand that this is not an instant thing. It might sound simple, but it's not easy and it can take time. What's the average length of time before someone lands on you call it a CPOP? I'll get you to explain that again. What's a CPOP and how long does it take for people to get that? That's that sort of singular statement that's bang in your face.
So first of all, as much as I would love to say that I would love for people to absolutely want that level of clarity, it turns out to be more of a need.
Yep.
Right. And so to answer your question, in terms of me working with either a company or an individual on their CPOP, it depends on the human. It depends on the company. If they're chock full of marketing cookie cutter bullshit, what I'll say is sometimes it might take a quarter or two, right?
Yep.
It takes enough time for them to unravel.
Yep.
For most humans I work with who are ready to hear the truth and be transparent, it can be anywhere between, I'm going to say 2 to 4 minutes and 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, it's super quick. It's just for the person who's really done a lot of introspection, a lot of thought, and they're really true to who they are. It's just pointing them in the right direction.
Potentially have overthought it.
Yeah. For those who for those who sort of need to be nudged, what often happens is I'll come up with something that I know is close but not good enough. And I want to step on a landmine so that they get angry or mad or they feel like they need to move in another direction. And so you poke left so they go right. I mean, so the answer is less than an hour for
Yep.
for at least 80% of the population. And for others, it's going to take as long as it takes for them to unravel. There are some people who are just so caught up with, and for those who are listening, I'm doing the double quotes, in the way things are supposed to be, that it takes forever. And so because this is, Trevor, because this is more of a need than a want, there are other services that I sell that are the want, right? So the want that I deliver are through other services. In order to deliver the other services, I have to give them what they need, which is that level of clarity that's the kickoff point for those other services.
Let's revisit that, wants versus needs, which is, we've taken a path down that. So people around clarity, they have a need for it, but they don't necessarily know that they've got a want for it. That's correct.
That's correct.
So people who without clarity, they must get to a point though that they just keep going around in circles, overthinking things and just continue down that path.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's really hard. It's now that I've been really focused heavily on clarity. This is since really probably 2020 is when I started, in between 2019 and 2020 is when I started thinking it through. The last year, it's been a primary focus. And I'm still unraveling. I'm getting a PhD focused around this topic area, so I get to do more research on it. If 98% of us don't have clarity, if 90% of us are born, live, and die without ever knowing our purpose, it's sometimes hard. The expression that's used often in the United States is kind of hard to read the label on the jelly jar from inside the jar, right? So if you don't know, if you don't know that you're missing clarity and you think you have it, and for me, the shocker when I talk to people and all of a sudden they get that clarity. I think maybe put it that first of all, they change and that they change in a really visible way. What I'll say, and let's put it in a different way. If you've gone through your entire life and you've never felt at peace or at home or that you fit in or any of those things, it could easily be because you have a lack of clarity. To me, that level of clarity, what I call a CPOP, your customer point of possibilities, it's in words, less than 10 words, the frequency that your body vibrates at.
Question without notice, have you got any examples?
Oh, sure. One of the examples that I'm using for my business today is, and what happens with a CPOP, just to be clear, it's not the same as who you are, what do you do? That's always the question, who you are, what do you do? The CPOP represents the playground you play in, and it's the who and the what. So the formula is, who do you serve? 1, 2, or 3 words.
Yep.
And the pain point or pleasure point that you deliver for that person. Right? So for me, at the bigger scale project associated with my executive coaching, it's really powerful. Inc. 5,000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance. Now, what happens when I'm speaking to a referral partner or I'm speaking to a prospect, most likely because they haven't heard the word executive abundance, they're going to say, what does that mean? That gives me a chance. That's the official tell me more. That gives me the chance to do the tell me more. But what's happening now, Trevor, I'm speaking from a level of incremental credibility because I've painted such a fine-tuned container about what I do.
Yep.
So in that particular case, what I'm talking about is the executive bringing abundance to themselves and the 5 stakeholders around them. Not just investors, which most fast-growing companies do, but also employees, customers, partners, and their family.
Mhm.
And what executive doesn't ultimately want to bring abundance to those around them?
Yeah.
That level of tell me more. Say, I don't have to do the how. I just have to do a little bit more about the what. So they go, wait a second, I want that, or I know somebody I need to recommend.
Yes.
Now, one of my friends, her CPOP is also extremely powerful. It is women leaders living in the past. And for her, the interesting part is those people whose decisions they're making are based on things that have happened in the past and they're living in retrospect and they don't want it to happen again. So they're not really living in present, they're living in yesteryear. It's I've done this over 1,000 times, and it's always interesting to see and to hear what people are focused on. But in essence, it's the who and the what.
The who and the what. And so, where a lot of people think it's the pitch, where this is what I do, you're focusing more on the person who you're helping,
Well,
the
so I'm
who
going to say,
and the pain point of them, and then obviously the how comes in through conversation.
so when we spoke, I've got the CPOP view because we did that last time when we were speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's interesting to me is it's and you said it in a way that was not 100% accurate, which was great, right? It technically has nothing to do with the person. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, right? The CPOP, when I'm thinking about this, if you are a credible human, you are, by the way, that's why we've liked each other for so long. If you're a credible human, you are of service to others. So the CPOP is, who do you serve? And
Mm-hmm.
from the perspective of who you serve, so for you, you serve expertise-based business owners.
Yes.
It's 4 words ish versus less. But if you know who you serve, then the next thing is, what is the pain point or pleasure point? So what we came up with for you, expertise-based business owners effectively leveraging digital PR.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's a little bit on the long side. On the other hand, there's a lot of things like, oh, hey, I'm a public speaker. Am I an expertise-based business? Yes, you are. And what do you mean effectively leveraging PR? Well, then you need to learn a little bit more about who they are. So what does effectively really mean for that person with that product, right? And what it what when you get to the point where you could say you've done something enough time, you're quote unquote 10,000 hours of practice, a thousand CPOPs delivered, and counting. It's one of those things that it it allows one to truly have expertise that's not seen elsewhere. And once you do that, for anyone who's involved, and by the way, it's many cases there are people who I've talked to that have overlapping. For instance, one of my other strategic partners, he runs a coaching organization. I actually got a bunch of coaching organizations where they actually are training coaches to be effective. What's interesting is when we deliver the CPOP to his clients, a lot of cases they're very similar because they're using the same tool set. They're using the same approach, the same methodology. So then what becomes the expertise? In many cases, it's the who. And based on the who, you may come up with a different either pleasure point or pain point.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for instance, if you're talking about CEOs, you always have to use a pleasure point because their egos are too big to use a pain point. Just as an example.
Yeah. And to be able to communicate this message, let's call it a message, Is this something that you feel is more effective when you're talking to people or across your social media or the banner on your website? I mean, obviously, you probably need to add a little bit more, maybe if it's a banner on a website or a call to action. How do you see this message being used by people?
So, yes, yes, and yes. It absolutely. So, think about that CPOP. So for me, just it's easier for you to look at somebody else versus for me to share yours, right? So if you think about Fortune 1000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance, right? That actually is a banner on my LinkedIn profile. On my LinkedIn profile are those words that reinforce it. So if somebody types in executive abundance, they hear me talk about it. I'm hoping the LinkedIn search engine will find it, see me, and bring up my profile as one of the profiles that pops up. When I'm thinking about the next article to write, or if I'm thinking about the name of my next presentation when I'm asked to speak at a conference or I'm applying to speak at a conference, I now have a compass to give me an idea of focus in terms of how I run my business.
Yep.
So, Trevor, what happens first is when you have your CPOP, you have that clarity, you now have a compass. You need to take that compass and apply it to your comm strategy and your comm approach, your communications approach. And if you do a really good job of communicating it everywhere, you've effectively turned your compass into a magnet. And that's the thing that we're just not thinking about it, because if you can say something that's less than 10 words, guess what? That person who really loves you, adores you, and wants to share you might actually remember it and remember you when the time is right.
Yeah. And obviously we think LinkedIn headlines and social media bios and, there's a range of ways to implement it. And I guess, as you said, by who do you serve and the type of person you serve, that's and their pain point, then you hoping that person will self-identify with your message. The other thing that you said earlier about when people sort of think about you or talk about you is there's two words, clarity and credibility. I've always loved this to be known for a word or a couple of words that people can. It's kind of not a fully formed message, but it's an association with something positive and powerful. Credibility, I think, is a key. It's a phrase I use all the time. You've got clarity and credibility. Walk us through that. Is that just evolve with you over time? How do you use those two words in your packaging?
Oh, I live, because for me, I believe that's a need, not a want. Those words are just part of who I am and what I do. So I actually, one of my books was called Credibility Nation. I have a company name called Credibility Nation. On clarity, on an active basis, going out and talking to people, I do run a paid for clarity session once a month. On a complimentary basis, one of my client magnets is running a referral webinar. And so that is once a month, actually twice a quarter. So not once a month, twice a quarter, I'm bringing people in a room and I'm showing them how lack of clarity and lack of credibility is bringing them a lack of referrals. Right? So if you got 3 negatives, you can make a positive. Or at least if you got 2 negatives, you can make a positive, right? So if you could fix the clarity thing, fix the credibility thing, then you'll fix the referral thing. And the reason I do that is I think, Trevor, the way I see the world today with AI, and particularly GPT and everything else out there, thought leadership has become ubiquitous. Anyone who wants to be an expert at something can be, not necessarily live, but they can write about their expertise because they have the writing partner, a GPT, at their side. So if that is the case, then what's important is you need to have more and more clarity so that you can actually take up a little bit of mind share with that person around you. With those people around you, you need to recommend you. You need to take up a little bit more mind share. For me, if I could help other partners be successful. So if anyone is running a particular business where they will be that much more successful with their clients, if their clients have clarity, great. What I've done on the back end is so my two businesses that I run, which are what people want. First, and I mentioned that in my CPOP, executives want executive abundance. So that's Mitchell Levy delivering executive coaching. On the business side, whether it's employees inside businesses or business owners, what they want to use is they want to use LinkedIn effectively. And they want to use LinkedIn effectively to be able to make money, drive more revenue, drive more referrals, or make more revenue, right? And so on the back end, I've been using that system, that approach, to be able to bring clarity and credibility to one's LinkedIn profile and messaging and outreach in such a way that at the end of the day, when I'm thinking about what's involved there, one, credible LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
Two, nurture your first level connections. So those that are important, you get on a Zoom call. Three, turn second level connections that should be first into first level connections. And that's what we do in such a way. So ultimately, the person we're working with gets to spend a half hour a day in LinkedIn messaging with the right people.
Yep. No, it's certainly a powerful tool. But as you say, when people are scrolling through LinkedIn, they're going to check your profile or whatever, or see your content. Is there a consistency to what you're doing? And are they clear about who you are and what you do, but who you help, more so important. With just going back to clarity and credibility, I just want to tick this bit off with you. You said that, I think you said, if you're clear and confident with how you present yourself, that does bring with it a degree of credibility. Now, if you've got the track record, there's inherent credibility there, but people have to dig for it. But if people come across as clear and confident in who they serve, what they do, that side of the pain point that they can help solve, then there's just this inherent credibility and comfort that comes with that. Do you think?
So there are 10 values associated with credibility. So what you're talking about is authenticity. So if you have confidence and authenticity and you're coming across in an authentic way, many cases, that will imply incremental credibility. Now, if you could come across in an authentic way as somebody who has the intent and commitment to do the right thing, now you're coming across, that's where the CPOP adds much more value, because it's the intent and commitment to do the right thing for the customer, not for you personally. And then one of the things that's important, of the 10 values of credibility, there is only one value that appeared twice in the research. And that is the value of integrity. So the definition of credibility, it's the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. Integrity falls under the categories of trust and known. So under trust, it's your external integrity. It's what you say to the world. So if somebody was authentic and their external integrity is saying all the right things, but as you get to know them, or even as you listen to them, their internal integrity is inconsistent with their external integrity. That's one of those things you ever get, the hair in the back of your neck sticks up and you go,
there's a disconnect there.
There's something wrong here. So to answer your question, if you have authenticity, if you have an alignment with your internal and external integrity, and you have the intent and commitment to do the right thing, and it's really easy for your prospect to see that, or your referral partner to see that, that's going to change everything in how you show up in the world.
Yeah, I really like that. Can we just expand a little bit on credibility? Because, for a lot of people, credibility is, I've got a track record, I've been in the business for this long and we've helped this amount of people, and that to them is their credibility. But as you've said, you've got to add layers to it. So authenticity is a big value, I think you called it. What's another one or two values? We won't go through all 10, but a couple of others that are important.
Let me give you, trying to think about the most important. I'll give you one under each one. So I'll give you one under trust, know, and like.
Yep.
So under trust, one of the most important is being coachable. Right. So, Trevor, I was, as part of the 500, one of the people that came my way was a professional speaker, somebody who was paid $30,000 to do keynote speeches. So, as someone who was being interviewed, what I would do when I would have somebody sign up for the interviews, I would send them a 15-minute video. Here's how to prepare it. And I'd ask them the first question. First question was, what's your CPOP?
Yep.
And I expect that answer to be less than 10 words. I even made it a game. I said, listen, 98% of people can't get it the first try. I want you to be the 2%. So this public speaker comes on, and when I said, what's your CPOP, he gave me his 30-second elevator pitch. I mean, literally 30 seconds. And I go, well, could you sort of narrow it down to just who you are or who you serve and what the pain point or pleasure point is? He then narrowed it down to 15 seconds. And then I said, by the way, at the time, I only thought there were 9 values of credibility. And so I then said a magic sentence, which caused me to add the 10th word. I said, hey, do you mind if I do a little bit of coaching? His response shocked me. His response was, yes, I do. And he went on to go, I have my way of doing things and you have yours, and I don't want to learn yours. So besides the bad words that came to my head that I was happy enough not to echo out loud, I realized that evening, and I woke up the next morning, that under being trustworthy, being coachable is a really important component. Being vulnerable and coachable.
Yeah.
So those are 2 values.
Yeah.
Under being known, and this is very easy to see with people, being a servant leader.
Yes.
And then under being liked, actually, I'll just give you the 2 values of being liked. One is showing respect. You'll notice when you look at the log, I came in 10 minutes early. To me, showing respect for a podcast, coming early, coming prepared, coming with your heart, right? There's no pretend here. This is exactly who I am. And, for right or for wrong, even if you ask a question they don't know, I'll do my best, right? So showing respect is really important. The other element, which is really powerful and surprisingly not enough people do it, I call it spreading cred dust. And what that is sharing the ideas, thoughts, and actions of others. So for instance, if there was something you liked on the podcast, or actually you do this as a podcaster, you then you're not only spreading my cred dust because we're interviewing, but if you do video clips and send them out there, you're spreading my cred dust, right? And everyone wins when you do that. So if you want to be liked, show respect and share other people's ideas, thoughts, and actions.
Yeah, I really align with those. And, when we hear about the know, like, and trust sort of thing, and I like that you put trust first, but the like is really important, but I think I always add respect in because I said once that, you might need a surgeon at one point and you might not like the surgeon, but if you respect that surgeon and you trust that he or she is good at what they do, well, then that's good. But respect is a really key word. Yeah. Mitchell, thank you for this. I just want to take a quick detour before we wind up, and I want to talk about your business or your entrepreneurial journey, because you are very active. You are constantly evolving. You are as relevant today as you probably were, if not more so, that I didn't know you 20 years ago. And, you talk about relevance as well. Walk us through your philosophy about, today running a business. I mean, we can employ people if we like. We can be a solopreneur and all the services and the platforms and the tech and everything around there to support us. But what's your general philosophy on running multiple businesses? Because you are running multiple businesses. You have what I would call a portfolio career. And just what are the businesses you're doing now, and what are some of the ones you've done in the past, like the publishing, for example?
Trevor, that was like 5 different questions.
I know. Sorry.
That's all right. I love that. We'll do the last one. What am I doing now? Because that's the easy thing. And then you could say, hey, Mitchell, tell me about how it's tied together. So real quickly, I am an executive coach. So I'm part of Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches. I love that because I'm not only affecting the life of the executive I'm working with, but all those working with them. And so it's a real phenomenal way to amplify myself. I am running a LinkedIn business. And what's nice about that, I'm going to answer it's part of your question. I'm at the build stage on that one, which means that I've been doing it myself for 8 years. I've been doing it with clients for a year, but now I'm starting to do it seriously. So what I try to do is find a solution that other people don't have. I document it, I put it into procedures, and then I hire people to serve. So at the moment, I'm still at the build stage, which means I'm still figuring it out. I'm still documenting it. And at some point in time, there'll be enough times that I've done it in a repetitive fashion that I'll be able to actually hire my supplemental team to actually do that for me. So that's the LinkedIn business is another one. We still have 4 book publishing companies. Now, I've been running book publishing companies since 2005. And so we've published over 750 books. At that stage, everything's in production. Where the author really needs me is what is the book, what it's going to be used for, and how are they going to be effective with the book after it's published and already out on the marketplace. That's where I add the most value. The mechanical stuff in the middle, my team does all that. Right. And so I'm sure there's a bunch of other things. Public speaker, I get paid for that. But there's a bunch of, I'd say your first question is, how does one decide? When you have a portfolio of stuff, how do you decide?
Yeah, your philosophy around that.
I think if you're a credible human, you are of service to others. So the question is, who is it that you serve, or who do you want to serve?
Who do you want to serve?
And what's interesting is life changes all the time. And so how you serve somebody today is going to change tomorrow. And so what's happening is you need to actually care enough about your clients to talk to them. How are you doing? What's going on? What's new? What other problems do you have? Hey, is this solution still working? Do I need to change it in any way? When I was an e-commerce consultant and I created a training program at a university, it was the first training program in the world talking about how to bring the internet into companies. It was at San Jose State. We sold 4,700 course seats, took in over $2 million. And I knew when I started that program that it would have an end date. I didn't know when, right? I just knew that at some point in time, there'll be enough people in the world understanding how to use the internet in business that it would go away. And so it goes to the entrepreneur that says, hey, listen, if you know there's an audience you want to serve, how is it that they need to be served today that they're willing to pay for it? And while you're making money, have fun, and always keep in mind that things change. And as things change, how much you could charge, what margins you make, all of those things change. With AI, what's happened is the ability to get some things done quicker and for less expense is powerful. But if you don't supplement that with rigorous fact checking and diligence checking, you're going to kick yourself in the butt. So you have to recognize the power of what you have and also be diligent on how you deploy it.
I like that. And I think the fact you've mentioned a couple of times you've sort of outsourced stuff to a team. What does that look like? Do you sort of set up a business and employ people, or people are on contract, or you've got VAs, or how are these teams, how do these teams work, which allow you to focus on doing what you're best at doing?
For me, in today's world, it's all VAs. And what I have, my top 2 VAs have been with me for 12 and 14 years.
Wow.
Right. And so what happens is what I found, and I'll give you the best thing to do with a VA. Do I have like 2-3 minutes for this one?
Yes. Let's hear it.
Right. So it's a document, and actually, Trevor, I'm happy to share this with your listeners. The URL is aha.pub, aha.pub/superheroes. Right. And And one of the things we have there, I think it's a 17-minute course called the Input Output. And because what happened when I first started hiring VAs, I'd have a conversation and I'd say, hey, I'd like to do this. And they would go, okay, I'm happy to do this. And then they would go away and they'd come back and I'd get something different than I asked for. Or I'd get something one way one time and differently the next time. And I'm like, and so I went through 2 VAs and I was on the final one before I was going to give up. And then I realized that in college, I learned something called the Input Output course. And IT people use this all the time. And so if you can imagine, by the way, and for those listening, and Trevor, if you have a pencil and a piece of paper, old school, put a box, just draw a box in the middle of the piece of paper. And on the left-hand side of the box, draw a line going in, call that line input. And coming out of the right-hand side of the box, call that output. The box itself is called the black box. So if I ask you a question, or if I ask anyone a question, or I ask the VA to do something for me, and she said yes, we are immediately talking about we're inside the black box. And so what I recognized was I need to document the inputs and outputs. So I created workflow documents. And at first, I would create the workflow documents with my VAs. So I'm like, okay, here's what's going to be as the input. Let's document what the input is. Here's what the output should look like. Let's document what the output should look like. And now let's walk through how do we make the process work. And probably the first 2-3 times I would do it with the VA until I'm like, okay, here are the inputs and outputs. Can you do the workflow document? Then what happens when that person's not around? They could point to somebody else.
Yep.
And so these are, by the way, this is not rocket science. These are Google Docs that are associated with particular processes. Yep. And you may end up with a number of workflow documents and tie them all together. But it is ultimately anything that's repetitive. If you look at everything in my company, anything that's repetitive, I have, well, hopefully mostly anything that's, what to say? I don't want to give it all. It's been documented. Yeah. Right? It's been documented. It's in a workflow. Anything that's new, it's mostly Mitchell building. Right. And that's the what I've done because that's the state of where the company is at the moment.
Yeah.
As companies grow and you end up with a lot more money, you're going to bring other people to build and create their own workflow documents inside the company. And that's what larger companies do. Right. But when you're talking about a company, 6-7 figure companies, in essence, that's how you go about doing what's appropriate to outsource in a way that it can be effective and you don't bang your head against the wall.
So it's putting the work in early for the longer term result that you're going to get consistency of that result of what you want. Thank you for sharing that, because that's good, because I mean we hear about hire a VA, do this and do that, and they're people too and they have their own way of doing things, and you've got to come together, and it's just like an employee. So by documenting, at least you've got that consistency. If you lose that VA for whatever reason and you need to put someone else on to do it or whatever, you're going to not go back to the well every time. I just want to finish up on one more thing. We said about relevance before. You said earlier that you're doing a PhD. I notice on LinkedIn you've got a lot of certifications. You are a lifelong learner, my friend. How important is that to stay relevant and vibrant as a professional?
First of all, we'll answer your question, single word, huge. Okay. What's interesting when you are focusing on that, when you're focusing on learning, it means you're growing. When you're focusing on learning and you're learning from an expert, what's really fascinating is everywhere you go is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to find a referral partner, and an opportunity to find a client. Let's add a fourth one, an opportunity to hire somebody to do stuff for you.
Yep.
Right. And so many times as I'm part of the program, as a student in somebody else's program, I'm going to pick up peer students as clients. many times in other people's programs, one of the best ways to show someone who has expertise in the marketplace that you care about them and that you're interested in who they are and what they do is to pay for their program and then apply their program to your audience and see if they want to be part of it. That's in a number of my businesses. That's happened to me. One of my students have come to me with, "Hey, Mitchell, I've taken what you've done. I've done this with it. You want to join me?" Like it's part of the concept of likability, being respected. And also somebody else wants to share my cred dust. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is indeed. And as you say, you can start connecting dots a lot more because you're coming at it from a base of an educated base versus just making stuff up by pure gut, I suppose.
Oh, by the way, there's nothing wrong with intuition, right? Intuition in the School of Hard Knocks is one of the best schools one can go to.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
And education is important if that is a way that you could learn and a way in which your audience will respect you.
Yeah,
if the audience you serve does not respect that, then you want to do it because you could learn if it makes sense. And I'll just give one. Sorry, I know you're going to talk. I just recently came back from one of the largest tech conferences with my 26-year-old. My 26-year-old, almost by definition, is a digital native. The way a digital native consumes information and interaction with the world is so much different than what you and I do. And so the way the world is going forward, that going to that event with him completely changed my perspective of what the world will need tomorrow.
Wow.
Because they think about things in such a dramatically different way.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what you also get. If you're going to a course with a bunch of students, but there are different age groups.
Yeah.
Oh my God, pay attention. Be part of it. See what their needs are. See what's natural and what's not natural. There's so much opportunity for learning and growing by doing a consistent activity with a group of others.
And the thing is too, I mean, we're talking about education on courses, but education is going to conferences, going to expos, talking to others. What you did a couple of years back by, having 500 interviews with credible people, you're learning from that. That's, to me, lifelong learning. That's learning all the time, reading books and all of that. And what I was saying earlier is that you've got to feed intuition, because if your intuition is not up to date, I believe you've really got to continue to feed that. And that's when I start talking about connecting dots, because you'll start seeing things or spark ideas that if you get stuck in your ways, the world's moving way too quickly now to get stuck in your ways. I just don't think you can, if you're not moving forward, you actually are going backwards today. It's just too volatile, too quick, the velocity at which our world is moving across media, marketing, business, social issues. You've got to sort of be across a lot of that, because they all crisscross, don't they, in terms of running a business. That's getting a bit philosophical now, so we'll finish up on that note. Mitchell, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this chat. There's so many, we could go on for about another hour, I'm tipping, easily. If we can send people to your online headquarters, what's the best place? Is it LinkedIn? Is it your website, or a bit of both?
Probably the best place is my website. So going to mitchellevy.com, mitchellevy.com. We'll update the types of things I'm focused on, where I'm focusing, what the offers are. And if you said, oh my goodness, I need to join the LinkedIn program, there'll be a link from that there. I need to join one of your complimentary sessions that you've done. There's a link there. If you need to book time on my calendar, there's a link there. So I think mitchellevy.com will be the best place to go. Thanks.
Awesome.
Trevor.
Thanks very much, Mitchell. Much appreciated, sir.
It is always a pleasure to spend time with you. And thanks for having me.